Welcome back to the Holographic Universe. This is Part 5, the last of a 5-part workshop series designed to examine how quantum physics and recent scientific experiments are radically changing our understanding of life, our reality, and our spirituality. We ended Part 4 of this workshop series by taking a look at how life apparently works in this model of the holographic universe. Let's review that briefly. First, your infinite I creates you as a player to represent it in the human game. Second, your infinite I, and not you, decides on an experience it wants you, the player, to have, and writes the script for that experience by choosing the specific wave frequencies in the field that will create this holographic 3D total immersion movie. Third, your infinite I downloads the wave frequencies for this script to your brain, along with everything you as the player will need to have this experience, including the money and the support from other players as appropriate. We'll talk all about that in a few minutes. Fourth, if there are other players involved in your experience, their infinite eyes download to their brains their own individual scripts and their parts to play in your movie that have been written or approved by your own infinite eye. Fifth, each player has its own unique and individual experience as everyone acts out this movie, reading their scripts. Each player has total free will to react and respond to its own unique experience in any way it wants, and no reaction or response by any player is wrong or better than any other reaction or response. Wait a minute. Let's stop here. If you remember, Bashar said in Part 3 of this workshop series that our job as players, what he called personality constructs, is to perceive the experiences our infinite I, what he called the higher self, creates for us.
It might surprise you to know, as personality constructs, as physical minds, you do not conceive of any ideas. What do I mean? The personality does not conceive of concepts. It perceives concepts. It does not conceive them. Here are the 3 levels. The higher self conceives. The physical brain receives. The personality mind perceives. That's all it does. One more time, because this is crucial to understand. You don't conceive of any ideas as a physical mind. That's not what the physical mind is designed to do. It cannot create ideas. It can only perceive the result of an idea from the higher self.
So it certainly seems that a lot of our reactions and responses to our experiences depend on how we perceive them, how accurate our perceptions are, and what might influence or interfere with those perceptions. Let's take a few minutes and look at our perceptions, and let's start by having some fun and watching some videos by Dr. Daniel Simons.
I'd like you to take a look around you. Take in all the sights, the sounds, if you're unlucky, the smells. You feel like you're seeing the world in all its completeness and detail. You feel like you're experiencing the world as it is. But that experience, as it turns out, is an illusion. What you actually experience is what your mind and your brain give you. It's an alternate reality. Take a look at this image. This is by Julian Beaver, who's a British artist. Now, this is an illusion. This is a nice painting of a swimming pool. It looks like it has depth. Looks like there's a woman sitting in the pool. Looks like Julian Beaver up on the upper right is dipping his foot into the pool. And as he's doing this, you feel like you're seeing the world as it is. But of course it's not. It's chalk art on a sidewalk. It just gives the impression of depth. And this is a double illusion, because as you're looking at this, you feel like, okay, yeah, I'm seeing a painting of chalk art on a sidewalk. But what you're actually seeing is a really weird view of a chalk painting on a sidewalk. You're seeing a chalk painting on a sidewalk from the one view that gives you the impression of depth, that gives you the impression that you're looking at a swimming pool. And from any other perspective, it looks much more like this. It's really substantially distorted. The key is that we feel that we're seeing it as it is, but we're actually not. Let me give you another example. This is from my colleague Bart Anderson. What you see here are two sets of chess pieces. The ones on the top look dark, the ones on the bottom look light. I'm sorry, the ones on the top look light, the ones on the bottom look dark. And you can't help but see them that way, even though that's not at all what you're actually seeing. Here's what you're actually seeing. I'm just removing the background. And when I remove the background, you can see that both sets of pieces are the same kind of mottled gray, and every piece on the top is exactly the same as the one directly below it. Now that you know that, of course, you'll be able to see them as they are when I show you the same image again, right? Nope. Once you go back to the background, you can't help but see it as it isn't. Your visual system is giving you the impression that you're seeing light pieces and dark pieces when you're actually seeing the same thing in both cases. What's happening here is that your visual system is taking into account not just the brightness of those individual pieces, but the brightness of the surfaces immediately around those pieces, and it takes that into account in a way that's actually really useful for us most of the time. It gives us the ability to see a piece of paper with black ink on it, the same inside in a dark room and outside in a really bright light. But it's not giving us the world exactly as it is. It's using a bag of tricks. It's using a set of shortcuts to give us the world as we need it. Now, what makes visual illusions like this so cool? There are two reasons. One is that it's surprising, but that's not terribly satisfying. The more interesting reason is that it's giving us the impression that we're seeing the world as it is, and it's violating that impression. It's breaking our intuition. It's forcing us to confront the fact that we aren't seeing the world as it actually is. Let me give you another example of this. This is from Bill Geisler and Jeffrey Perry. This is a nice picture of flowers, pleasant for today. I'm going to show you a bee, and I want you to follow that bee around this image with your eyes. So track the bee as it moves through the image. So it's just going to kind of wander around the image here, and you're able to follow it just fine. And eventually it's going to end up back where it started. And we're back. Okay, now I want to show you exactly the same sequence, except this time, instead of tracking that bee with your eyes, I want you to maintain your focus, maintain your gaze right on the bright yellow flower. And notice what happens to that flower as the bee gets farther and farther away. It gets blurrier and blurrier. That's exactly the same sequence. You're seeing exactly the same thing you did the first time, except that this time you probably noticed that it's getting blurry, whereas the first time you didn't notice that anything was changing about the image at all. Well, why is that? The reason is that you're actually only taking in detail from a tiny, tiny subset of your visual world at any instant. In fact, you're taking in detail from a subset about the size of that bee. Right? You're taking in, if you stick your arm out and put your thumb up, you're taking in high-resolution information only from the information about the width of your thumb. Beyond that, it becomes progressively blurrier, but we don't notice this at all. Why not? Well, we move our eyes 3 or 4 times a second when we're looking at the world. We don't realize we're doing that. And everywhere we look at that instant, we're seeing everything in detail. If something's in our periphery and it's potentially interesting, we look over there and we see it in detail. So we get the impression the false impression that we're seeing everything in detail. Let's take a look at this issue. We assume that everyone is seeing the world exactly as it is. And this has profound implications for how we think about the world around us. Despite differences in our knowledge and our beliefs and our expectations, we feel like we're seeing the same thing as everybody else. I've used visual illusions as a way of illustrating how we don't see the world exactly as it is, but these sorts of illusions are not just limited to our visual system. They're not just limited to our visual system, they also affect the way we think, the way we remember, the way we reason. We think we see more than we do. We think we see all of the detail around us. We don't. But we also think we remember more than we do and that we know more than we do. And these illusions lead to a really substantial problem. They lead us to think that everybody is seeing the same thing that we are, when in reality, two people looking at exactly the same world could be taking in different information at the same time. Now, what does that mean? It means that any time you have to communicate, any time you're trying to be a trainer or a CEO or a leader, or you're trying to lecture or teach, you have to take into account the fact that your knowledge and your experiences and what you see are going to be different from those of the people in your audience. All of advertising depends on exactly that principle. You have to know what your audience is going to see in the advertisement. Now, the problem is that we all share one thing. Even though we don't necessarily see the world the same, we all share one thing. We share this illusion that we see the world the same as everybody else. And only by testing your knowledge and testing what you're actually seeing, just like you do with the visual illusion, do you realize that you're not actually seeing the world as everybody else is. And in fact, we don't all see the same thing. Only by testing your knowledge can you see the world as it actually is. Thank you.
Here are some important quotes from that video. The key is that we feel we are seeing the world as it is, but we're actually not. Our perception is not giving us the world exactly as it is. It's using a bag of tricks. It's using a set of shortcuts to give us the world as we need it. We assume that everyone is seeing the world exactly as it is, and this has profound implications for how we think about the world around us. Despite differences in our knowledge and our beliefs and expectations, we feel like we're seeing the same thing as everybody else. And in fact, we don't all see the same thing. Now, the problem is, even though we don't necessarily see the world the same, we all share one thing. We share this illusion that we see the world the same as everybody else. I use visual illusions as a way of illustrating that we don't see the world exactly as it is. Only by testing your knowledge and testing what you're actually seeing do you realize that you're not actually seeing the world as everybody else is. So let's take Dr. Simon's suggestion and test our perceptions to see how accurate they really are. Some of you may have seen these before. If so, just play along. Grab a piece of paper and something to write with, and number down the left-hand side from 1 to 13. Now, simply answer the questions starting with number 1. Number 1, true or false? The red lines are all straight and parallel. Number 2, true or false? The green column is the largest of the 3 columns. Number 3, what color is the line making the circumference of the circle? Number 4, true or false? The red lines are all straight and parallel. Number 5, How many different colors do you see in this picture? Number 6. Which dot in the middle is bigger, A or B? Number 7. True or false? Every line in this picture is straight and parallel. Number 8. True or false? Line A to B is longer than line B to C. Number 9. Which box has the darkest gray dot in the middle? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? Number 10. True or false? The long straight lines are all parallel. Number 11. True or false? The straight vertical line in A is longer than the straight vertical line in B. Number 12. Do you see a young woman or an old hag? Number 13. Are you looking at the front or the back of this woman? Let's see how well you did, how good your perceptions are. Number 1 is true. The red lines are all straight and parallel. Number 2 is false. All 3 columns are the same size. The answer to number 3 is that there is no line making the circumference of the circle. It just appears that way. Number 4 is true. The red lines in the pictures are all straight and parallel. In number 5, there are 3 different colors: white, red, and green. The red is the same red throughout the picture, and the green is the same green throughout the picture. In number 6, both the dots in the middle of A and B are the same size. Number 7 is true. Every line in the picture is straight and parallel. Number 8 is false. The line from A to B is exactly the same length as the line from B to C. In number 9, all the gray dots in the middle are exactly the same shade of gray. Number 10 is true. The long straight lines are all parallel. Number 11 is false. Both straight vertical lines in A and B are exactly the same length. Number 12 is interesting because both a young woman and an old hag are there. Can you see both? Looking at the left side of the old hag's face, you can see her left eye, her nose, and her chin. Looking at the left side of the young girl's face from behind, you can see the tip of her nose, her left ear, and her chin. Number 13 is equally as interesting. You can see this woman from the front or the back. The best way is to look at her breast. If you see this woman from behind, that's her right breast, and her left knee is in front. If you see her from the front, that's her left breast, and her right knee is in front. If you have seen these illusions before and know the correct answers, or if you could figure them out, you still have to force your mind to overrule your brain. Because, honestly, when you look at these illusions, our senses perceive them to be very different than what they actually are. This whole question of perception is a fascinating topic, and apparently very key to our job as a player. So we're going to watch 2 more videos with Dan Simons, who is a prominent experimental psychologist, cognitive scientist, and professor in the Department of Psychology and the Beckman Institute at the University of Illinois. Simons is most well known for his work on change blindness and inattentional blindness, 2 surprising examples of how people can be unaware of information right in front of their eyes. This next video is his most famous and will test what you're actually seeing.
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half miss the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it, but did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events. And that's the monkey business illusion.
Now watch Dr. Simons as he talks about this invisible gorilla video.
I'm Dan Simons. I'm a professor in the psychology department at the University of Illinois, and I also have an appointment at the Beckman Institute for Advanced Science and Technology. My research here focuses on visual cognition, what we see, what we don't see, how much of our visual world we're aware of, how much we remember from one moment to the next. One of my best-known studies was done with my collaborator Chris Chabris some years ago, and it was based on some much earlier work by our colleague Dick Neisser. And what we had was a video in which people were passing basketballs. So 3 people were wearing white shirts and they were passing a ball, and your task when you were watching the video was just to count how many times those 3 players passed the ball. We also had 3 players wearing black shirts passing their own ball, and you were supposed to ignore their passes. So as you're doing this task, after about 30 seconds, say, we'd have a person wearing a full-body gorilla suit walk into the middle of the scene, stop in the center, turn and face the camera, thump its chest, and then walk off the other side a total of about 9 seconds later. And what we find is that about half the people who do this simply don't notice the gorilla.
When Dan asked me to be a part of this experiment, I thought, no way, people are totally going to see me. I'm a 400-pound gorilla.
We'll ask them afterwards, how many passes did you count, which they generally get pretty close to right. We then ask them, did you notice anything unusual? Did you notice anything other than the players? Did you notice anything walk through the scene? And they'll say no. So we ask them, did you notice a gorilla? And the response is typically, a what?
So then the Simons guy says, we can show you and not everyone's going to see you? Yeah, right. How can people not see me? I'm huge. I'm ferocious. I'm a 400-pound gorilla. What was he thinking?
And we rewind the tape and show it to them again, and the reaction is typically, I missed that? It's shocking that you could possibly miss something as obvious as a gorilla. Of course, the people who noticed the gorilla are shocked that anybody could possibly have missed it, because it's right there in front of you.
I walk in there, I walk in the middle, all these kids are running around throwing this ball around, I stand there, I thump my chest. Not once, not twice, 3 times I thump my chest. That's scary, man. What else are people gonna look at? You know, I'm big, I'm a gorilla, and they don't see me. What's up with that?
This is the intuition we have, that if something important or distinctive or unusual, like a person in a gorilla suit, walks into our field of view, we'll automatically notice it. The reality is that only about half the people do. About 90% think they will.
People are just so focused on counting those passes that they don't notice me. You know, I'm not trying to be subtle here.
Even more remarkable, my colleague Daniel Memmert used the gorilla video in a study in which he had people wearing an eye tracker. And what that does is tells you exactly where they're looking as they're watching this video and counting the passes by the team wearing white. And what he found was that the people who missed the gorilla looked at it for up to a second. So they looked right at it, but still didn't see it. Looking isn't the same as seeing. We have to focus attention on something in order to become aware of it.
How do you think it makes me feel? You know, I'm trying to be intimidating. It makes me feel inadequate.
The most consistent question we get is, are there some people who consistently notice the gorilla and other people who don't? So are there noticers and missers among us? And the reality seems to be no, that it's largely just a matter of a flip of the coin. We know when we've noticed something unexpected, but we're not aware of the times when we've missed something unexpected. The failure to notice people in gorilla suits is really a natural byproduct of something that we do quite well and that's very important to us, which is focusing our attention. We need to be able to filter out the distractions from our world and not let them interfere with our ability to do the task we're trying to do. The key is that when you're focusing your attention on one aspect of your world, you don't have an unlimited amount of attention to devote to other things. And we only see those things that we focus our attention on. The problem is that on occasion we filter something that we might want to notice, and we don't realize that we're doing that. That sort of mismatch between what we see and what we think we see is a really profound one that has all sorts of consequences for our daily lives.
Okay, I admit it. I didn't see me either.
Dr. Simons said that we only see those things that we focus our attention on, and that sort of mismatch between what we see and what we think we see is a really profound one that has all sorts of consequences for our daily lives. But this doesn't apply only to gorillas, obviously. If we as players are focused on what we don't have in life that we think we want or need, we could easily not see or fully enjoy and appreciate all the things right in front of us. If we focus on the fear of losing our wallet from our pocket as the roller coaster goes upside down, we could miss out on all the fun and excitement of the ride. If we focus on trying to visualize and manifest and attract what we think we want in a mate, we could miss the one right in front of us who doesn't meet those beliefs, but could actually be the one. If we focus on trying to avoid the dangers of taking risks, we could miss the most exciting opportunities of our lives. If we focus on our fear of dying, we could miss living. You get the point. Dan Simons is a lot of fun, but I want to get back to the question, which is, if our job as players, according to Bashar, is to perceive the experiences our infinite eye creates for us, and if we don't always seem to be doing a very complete job of that, according to Dan Simons, are there other factors involved, more than just our focus, that are influencing and affecting our perceptions, making us see the world as we need it, rather than as it actually is? It's time to introduce you to Dr. Bruce Lipton. Dr. Lipton began his scientific career as a cell biologist. He received his Ph.D. from the University of Virginia, before joining the Department of Anatomy at the University of Wisconsin's School of Medicine in 1973. In 1982, Dr. Lipton began examining the principles of quantum physics and how they might be integrated into his understanding of the cell's information processing systems. And he discovered that the brain of a cell is not in the nucleus, which is what I was taught in school, but in the membrane, the outer surface or skin of the cell. His website says his research at Stanford University's School of Medicine between 1987 and 1992 revealed that the environment operating through the membrane controlled the behavior and physiology of the cell. His discoveries, which ran counter to the established scientific view that life is controlled by the genes, gave rise to one of today's most important fields of study, the science of epigenetics. Many subsequent papers by other researchers have since validated his concepts and ideas. Epigenetics is to biology what quantum physics is to physics. It has turned our age-old understanding of biology upside down. Or, as I've put it many times already, the opposite of what we have always believed is true. From epigenetics, we now know our perception of the environment controls our DNA, not the other way around. We're going to watch 3 video clips from Dr. Lipton. In this first video, he's also going to give you a short perception test. So watch carefully.
So there are 3 conclusions because I don't have enough time to talk about one, but I will list them. Okay, conclusion 1, perception, how you see life, the switch, controls behavior because that's protein. Perception controls which genes are being read and how they're being read. And the one I didn't have time for right now is the third one. Perception can rewrite the genetic code. So perception controls life. No 2 people see the world in the same way. They have different perceptions. But let's do a perception test. Is the surface area of A greater than, equal to, or less than the surface area of B? Which is greater? B, yeah. This is they're equal size squares. Not equal, but they're uniform. So I want to make a more difficult test. I will show you 2 surface areas that are not regular. You must, with your mind, see which is bigger. Which has more surface area, Europe or South America? The answer is South America. South America is 2 times larger than Europe. Twice as large. You can see that, right? Map is wrong. This is the Mercator map. It was made by Germans. Where did they put Germany? Deutschland is in the dead center. Isn't the equator the dead center? This map is wrong. You want to see the correct map? It's called the Peters projection map. Which is larger, South America or Europe? The point is that you learn perceptions. And sometimes your perceptions can be right, and sometimes your perceptions can be wrong. Since perception controls biology, and since they can be right or wrong, then it's more accurate to say that belief controls biology. What you believe creates your life on the inside and on the outside.
If there was one thought I would pick out of that video to remember, it's this. Perception controls life. Sometimes your perceptions can be right, and sometimes your perceptions can be wrong. And since perceptions can be wrong, It is more accurate to say that beliefs control biology. What you believe creates your life, on the inside and on the outside. Dr. Lipton is going to use an example called the placebo effect. Placebo is normally used as a medical term, meaning a patient is given something neutral, like a sugar pill, and yet it makes them feel better. There is no chemical reason in the placebo for it to have any effect at all on the body, but it does somehow. That somehow is because the patient believes it will, and nothing else. It is the patient's belief that changes their biology and their behavior. But this placebo effect does not have to be limited to medicine or pills. In fact, it is in operation a lot of the time as we, the players, believe something, anything, is good for us that is actually neutral, and yet it makes us feel good or better. This, of course, is true for all homeopathic remedies as well. Homeopathy is still based on a belief that taking something from out there, natural though it might be, will have an effect in here. The other side of the coin, and not nearly as well known, is the nocebo effect. This is when a patient, or a player, believes something, anything, that is actually neutral is harmful to them, and it makes them feel bad or worse, when in fact there's nothing in the nocebo that can hurt them at all. Take a look.
Now, we have heard of something called the placebo effect, right? The placebo effect is when you have a very positive thought that something can heal you, even if you don't know it, but it's a sugar pill, but you believe it's the real medicine, then you can heal yourself with that. So the pill didn't heal you, it was the thought that healed you. Statistics reveal that 1/3 of all medical healings, including surgery, are the result of the placebo effect. Now, the issue is that the placebo effect is when you have positive thinking. There was a question this morning, what about negative thinking? And this is what medicine does not tell you, is that there is negative thinking, and it's called the nocebo effect. And in the same power that positive thinking can heal you, negative thinking can kill you. They're both the same effect. One is more positive, one is more negative, but the effects are exactly the same on your health. One will heal you, and the other can make you sick. If a doctor tells you you have a disease, or the doctor tells you you're going to die, and you believe the doctor because he's a professional, the belief will give you a disease and can cause you to die. So belief becomes an important part of medicine. Now, many of you have heard about the drug Prozac. Every year, billions of dollars are spent on buying Prozac. And here's a surprise, that the Prozac is no better than a sugar pill, so that it is a placebo drug. And yet the people who take it believe in the drug so much, it makes them better. So if you believe that something is good for you, it will be good. And if you believe that it's harmful for you, it will be bad. In the United States, in the South, there's a religious group called the Baptist Fundamentalists. And this one group works themselves up into a state of ecstasy, religious ecstasy. And they believe God protects them. And so they will work with snakes, poisonous snakes like rattlesnakes, and they will even get bitten by the snake and nothing happens to them. Now look at this though. Some of them Some of them will drink strychnine in toxic doses, and when they're in that state of belief, it does not affect them. So if you can drink toxic poison, then why do we worry so much about the toxins or the food and the air and all that? Because we have a belief that the toxins can kill us. And even on the cigarettes, on the package, it tells you this will kill you. But even though I know this, I will not drink strychnine. And why? Because my belief is not as strong as their belief. Belief is important about everything, including our health and our aging and the world that we live in. This is a picture of some beautiful women that dance in what is called the Palm Springs Follies. And I ask, what do you think is unusual about these women? They have arms, but they're in red gloves against the red, so it's hard to see. What is unusual? Their ages. To 75 years old. Aging is not in their belief because they have a passion to dance. And the passion keeps them young and alive and healthy. But most of us see other people grow old and expect that we must grow old like they do.
In both cases, the placebo and the nocebo, it is the player's belief and not the actual experience that controls their perceptions and determines their behavior. Dr. Lipton said, if you believe that something will be good for you, it will be good. And if you believe that something is harmful, it will be bad. He also said, if you can drink toxic poison, then why do we worry so much about the toxins in the food and the air and all that? Because we have a belief that the toxins can kill us. Belief is important about everything, including our health, aging, and the world we live in. In the next video, Michael Talbot, author of The Holographic Universe, also discusses the placebo effect, and at the end, the nocebo effect as well, tying it directly to Carl Pribram and quantum physics.
Pribram, as I said, says that we're thinking with holograms inside our head, and that out there exists something that's more akin to the radio waves in the room from which your TV gets the image. So in essence, we're kind of conscious TV sets, and what we think is reality when we look out here is really just the image on the TV set inside our mind, but doesn't exist out there. And Pribram says this is why there's all kinds of evidence that we seem to respond more to the models of reality in our head than out there. In the holographic universe, I give an example of a psychologist who did a study where he took soldiers and marched them all the same distance, but he told some they marched, like he marched them all 30 miles or 20 miles, but told some they marched 10, some they marched 20, some they marched 30. But they all marched the same distance. At the end, he took physiological readings and discovered that physiologically they responded not to the actual mileage that they had marched, but to what they had been told, the model of reality that they assumed they had, the reality in their heads. And in medicine, people have used this application of the holographic idea that we respond to the model of reality to say this may be why we respond more to the placebos, to fake drugs. There's a very famous example of a fellow who had lymphatic cancer, tumors the size of oranges all throughout his body. His doctor basically thought he had about 3 days left to live. The fellow heard about a new drug called Crebiozin and said, "You've got to give this to me." And the doctor said, "Well, frankly, I don't think you have long to live, and this drug takes several weeks to take effect." The man implored him, and the doctor gave in sort of as an act of pity. He gave the man Crebiozin, and 3 days later, the man's tumors melted, as the doctor put it, like snowballs in a hot stove, completely gone out of his body, faster than the strongest radiation treatment could have melted them away. The man is up and around, walking around his hospital room, resumes his normal life, seems to be completely cancer-free. Several months down the line, he reads an article saying crebiosin isn't that effective. Boom, 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 all his tumors come back. He's back in the hospital. The doctor starts to realize that maybe it wasn't the drug that cured the man, but the man's belief. So he lies to the man and he says, those articles are wrong. Crebiosin is effective, and in fact, I've got an even more potent version of it. He injects just salt water into the man's veins. Again, the man's tumors melt away. He resumes his normal life. Unfortunately, many months down the line, he reads final studies on crebiosin saying it's completely ineffective. Boom, 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 his tumors come back and he dies. But the bottom line is somehow this man had the ability to access some deep level of healing himself. It wasn't the drug, because salt water worked just as well as this alleged drug. And so again, here's an instance where he responded to the model of reality in his head, this deep belief that this drug would heal him, even though he wasn't even receiving the drug at a certain point in his treatment. And his body responded in kind. And that, to me, is the most exciting aspect of the holographic idea. And there are countless examples of it. There's a study of a new chemotherapy in England where they took a group of cancer patients. Half the patients they gave the drug, half the patients they gave a placebo, a fake. No one knew who was receiving the real drug or not. They told all the patients, this is a very toxic drug, may cause you to lose your hair. 30% of the people receiving just the fake lost their hair. And when I first heard this, I immediately thought, oh my gosh, about every donut that I'd ever eaten in my life, and thought, oh, this is really bad for me. That I may be responding to the model of reality more than you know, the nutritional aspects of the donut.
There was a book and a popular British TV diet show in the last decade called You Are What You Eat. Once again, a catchy slogan, but not true. You are what you believe about what you eat. Not so catchy, but a lot more accurate. But getting back to Dr. Bruce Lipton, in the next video, he uses the analogy of a camera, taking snapshots of the physical world our brain has projected out there. But, he says, our beliefs act like filters on that camera, filtering out certain frequencies and changing the picture that comes in. The video you are about to watch is very poor quality, and the sound actually goes out of sync in places. It was one of the early workshops Dr. Lipton gave and not professionally produced. But still, the information is so important that I ask you to put up with that and listen carefully anyway.
Here's the point. We adjust our genes to fit the environment that we think we live in. And I say we think we live in because perception may be right and perception may be wrong. And therefore, perception is belief. And if this is true, do you understand what this means? It's belief that changes your genes. It's your perception that changes your genes. It's not an accident. We have now found out that in every one of your cells, you have genes whose function it is to rewrite the other genes when necessary. So you are all equipped with an ability to adapt and change your genes as you respond to the environment. So all of a sudden it says this. The environment, watch where the arrow goes, the environmental signals activate genetic engineering genes. They can change your own genes and change your genotype. But this one, organisms' perception of the environment separate from the environment. Why? Because perception and environment may be two different things. I might say, I live in a toxic, hostile environment, but that might be my belief. I might be in a very supportive environment. So it says, my perception may differ from the reality of the environment. But nonetheless, what does perception do? Follow the blue arrow. Activates genetic engineering genes. Your own beliefs are selecting your genes. And if you don't have the right genes to handle the stress that you're in, your belief will rewrite your genes in an effort to do so. So all of a sudden it says there's a lot of control over your life, but it's mediated by the perception of the environment. That's what's controlling the whole thing. So our third conclusion is not only does the perception activate behavior, not only does the perception activate the genes, but when necessary, perception rewrites genes. By adjusting your perception, you can adjust your behavior. By adjusting your perception, you can select different genes in your function. By adjusting your perception, you can rewrite your genes. So the bottom line is this. The perception of the environment, your nervous system sees the environment and interprets it. So here's the real environment. Here are the cells. Interestingly enough, if I would take dystrophic patients and take muscle cells out of their body, in many cases, when I took the cells out of the body and put it into a good environment, the cells grew beautifully and grew healthy and well. But when they were in the body, they didn't. Why? Because somewhere between the environment and the cell, the perception got involved with it. So our beliefs are altering our biology at every moment, at every time. So in conclusion, let me wrap it up and show you this. Here's the point. The body is like a camera for the following reason. Whatever the environmental signal is, it's picked up by the lens. So the camera sees something, the lens picks it up and translates it into the film where you make a complementary copy so that the camera always makes a complement of what is found in the environment. Well, the truth is in biology it's the same thing. The cell is like a camera. Whatever is in the environment, the membrane is like a lens. It picks up the image and sends that image to the nucleus where the database is. And that's where the stored images are. And the interesting aspect about it is this. The cell will make a physical structure to complement the environment. So that's, if you're a diagnostician and you're looking at somebody's health, their physical expression is a reflection of the environment that they're in because they're making that mimic. So the bottom line is this. When you open your eyes, is this the image you see? The reason why. If you open your eyes and live in this stressful situation, what are you going to do to your physiology? Adrenaline, fight or flight, shut down growth, shut down the immune system, and be less intelligent. But you could easily look at the world and see a much better, healthier picture. For example, Maxfield Parrish's ecstasy. When you see this picture, so the question is, I could see this world and see this, and what do you think I'm going to be in, growth or protection? Growth. So the bottom line is how I see it is adjusting who I am. Well, the interesting part about that is as follows. The perception interfaces between the environment and your biology. But your perception is belief. And therefore, beliefs act as a filter between the real environment and your biology. So your belief filters interfere if they're not accurate. If your beliefs are off, you're going to select genes that are inappropriate for the environment. So again, what keeps you in balance? Keeping your perception clear. So the bottom line is this. We actually end up with a filter between the environment and the camera, which is learned. We learned these filters. Before we were born, we were already learning. On the weekend course, I talk about conscious parenting. Many of your beliefs were already installed in you before you were born through the interaction of your mother and her perception of the environment, because she was helping. Mothers and fathers are actually are genetic engineers. They are selecting genes in their offspring as they develop, so the offspring fits the environment that the parents live in. Interesting point. Well, the question is this. We have filters. So, you've got envelopes that you came with. There's a red and green filter. Let's call these belief filters. And what I would like you to do is put one or the other filters in front of your eyes. Pick a red one or a green one, whatever one they got, and hold it up in front of your eyes and look at the screen. I'm going to ask you a question, and don't open them up. If they're double, keep them folded, okay? Here you go. Now I'm going to ask you a question. When you look at the picture, tell me if this is a picture of love or fear. When you see it, does it look like love or fear with your glasses on? Put the glasses on. Are you living in love or are you living in fear? Okay, now take the glasses off and find the other glasses. Okay, you got a different set of glasses now? Okay, put those up. You ready? Are you living in love or are you living in fear? Okay, are you living in love or are you living in fear? Well, here's the simple point. This is the beautiful point. Life has everything in it. Life has everything, but you will only see what you have perception filters to see. And you were taught perception filters. You were taught by your parents. You were taught in school. You were taught how to see life. And here's the beautiful part. We can remove these filters that have interfered with our lives.
Of course, as a cell biologist, Dr. Lipton focuses on the body, and in particular, the genes. We adjust our genes to adjust to the environment we think we live in. And I say we think we live in because perception may be right and perception may be wrong. I might say, I live in a toxic, hostile environment, but that may be my belief. I may actually be in a very supportive environment. My perception may differ from the reality of the environment. Your own beliefs are selecting your genes. He says it again and again. It's belief that changes your genes. It's perception that changes your genes. Not only does perception activate behavior, not only does perception activate the genes, but when necessary, perception rewrites genes. Since Dr. Lipton equates perception and belief, that sentence could read, not only do your beliefs activate behavior, not only do your beliefs activate the genes, but when necessary, your beliefs rewrite your genes. Our beliefs are altering our body at every moment, at every time. Your belief filters interfere if they're not accurate. But we can remove these belief filters that have interfered with our lives. This is such an extremely important point. Dr. Lipton did not say we can change these belief filters that interfere with our lives. This is not about changing belief systems. This is not about trading one belief system for another one. This is not about replacing negative beliefs with positive beliefs, or about the power of positive thinking, which is a belief in itself. This is about removing, letting go of our beliefs altogether. What was not very clear, because of the poor quality video and the way the experiment was run this time, was the picture at the end and the different colored glasses the audience was supposed to put on. I've seen Dr. Lipton do this a couple times, and here's how it actually goes. Dr. Lipton puts a picture on the screen. If the entire audience puts on the glasses with the red lenses, or the fear filter, they would filter out everything in the picture that was red, leaving the picture full of fearful things. If the audience puts on the glasses with the green lenses, or the love filter, they would filter out everything in the picture that was green, leaving the picture full of loving things. Then Dr. Lipton said, life has everything in it, but you will only see what you have belief filters to see. That's how belief filters work. They determine what we see, how we perceive things in our holographic 3D total immersion movie. So, are you ready for the heresy? Unless you can love war and violence for the perfection they are, as much as you love a beautiful sunset, or inspiring music, or the touch of a woman's skin, that love becomes conditional, not unconditional, and acts just like another belief filter, as it was in Dr. Lipton's experiment. And if you try to see the world only through a love filter, you will miss everything else your infinite eye has created for you there. For the secret to true joy and lasting peace of mind is being able to see the complete picture and everything that's in it, and embrace and enjoy it all equally, without judgment or resistance. And there's no reason you can't do that when you understand that your own infinite eye is creating it all for you, as a gift to you, down to the smallest detail. So what I want to do now is take a very specific example we all encounter every day of our lives and see how these belief filters apply. And that example is money. In the U.S., if I go around and ask people what they believe about money, I get a lot of different answers. See if any of them might be something you believe as well. I have to earn money. I have to work for money. I can't afford even my basic needs. There's a limited supply of money available to me. Every time I spend money, the supply of money decreases. Nothing I really want is free. If I want more money, I have to work harder, or smarter, or deliver more value. I've got to have a plan to make money, invest it wisely, and build wealth over time. If I have money, I have to protect it, or I could lose it. I have to be responsible with my money. I must be fully, totally, and truly committed to making money. There's never enough money. There's something dirty about money and those who have a lot of it. Money is the root of all evil. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. More money is better. Money doesn't grow on trees. Some have the gift of making money and others don't. Money doesn't come easy. You can't have money and be spiritual. Money comes from out there, and you have to go out there to get it and bring it in here to you. The world's financial system, the way it is set up and run by a few international bankers, is rigged against me, and a normal person stands no chance to make money. And the one that pushes my button so much, I've tried to use the secret and the law of attraction and visualization and meditation and other self-help techniques to manifest money, but they didn't work. So I must be doing something wrong. There must be something wrong with me. Maybe you have even more beliefs you can add to this list. All the statements on that list are beliefs people have about money, stories they make up to explain why they think they don't have enough money or can't make more money, or in many ways feel like they are a victim of the money game. If any of these are true for you, and if Dr. Lipton is correct, these beliefs are acting as a filter on your perceptions and directly influencing your relationship with money. But are any of these beliefs about money actually true? Well, yes, they can all be true in the first part of the human game, because they all lead to more and more limitations and restrictions. But as we now know, the second part of the human game is exactly the opposite of the first part, and none of these beliefs is true in the second part. Not one. My favorite is, money doesn't grow on trees, which is what my parents told me all the time. But it's not true either. Money does grow on trees. Money is made of paper, which is made from trees. It's amazing what beliefs we are taught, as Bruce Lipton said, and then carry with us the rest of our lives, never questioning whether they are true or not. The truth is, you don't have to work for or earn money. There is an unlimited supply of money available. Whenever you spend money, the supply of money does not decrease. There is always enough money for any experience your infinite I wants you to have. More money is not necessarily better. Money does come easy. You can have money and be spiritual. Money doesn't come from out there. You cannot be a victim of the financial system or the international bankers. It is not your fault when The Secret and the Law of Attraction and other self-help techniques you try to use to manifest money don't work. Do you believe all of that? Or any of it? Let's talk about why it's true. First of all, where is money created? And who creates it? Money is part of the hologram, like everything else in our holographic universe, and is created from the field by choosing specific wave frequencies and downloading them to a human brain. And the one who is choosing those frequencies from the field is your infinite I. It is your infinite I that creates the money you have and no one else. Not you, not the central banks, not the international banking cartel. Interestingly enough, though, the central banks and the international banking cartel use exactly the same method to create money as your infinite I does, out of thin air. But that's beside the point. If an infinite I chooses certain specific experiences from the field it wants its player to have, wouldn't it also give its player everything it needs to have those experiences as well? Does it make sense that any infinite I would want its player to have a certain experience and then not give it everything it needs to have that experience, including all the money required for the experience? Where else is the player going to get the money and other things it needs for an experience if its infinite I doesn't create them, since the player has no power to create anything itself on this side of the field? If we go back to our kids' video games, like Minecraft that we saw before, the person working the controls has to make sure its player has everything it needs for the experience it is about to have, like weapons, tools, money, energy and power credits, and so on. In this example we're going to see, the experience is to collect sand from the ocean. So the controller is going to make sure the player has everything it needs to do that.
Hi guys, and welcome back to Let's Play Minecraft. This is Regarth here, and we are on episode 5. I decided this morning what I'd do today is, in my given amount of time, which is not very long, I'm going to go out and collect some sand. And it just turned night, so I don't even know if that's going to work out. I do hear a zombie. Alright, I'm going to try it anyway. I'm going to go out in the water and do it. So, I need a few things to be able to do this. Firstly, I'm going to need a boat. And a lot of shovels. So, there's some stone. Let's put my coal back. Let's put everything I don't really need back. I'm going to eat one of these so I can get some health. Okay, so let's craft some more. How many sticks? Let's say 4 more shovels will do the job. Shovels do break pretty fast, so I will need a few of them. And let's go ahead and just eat this now. And make a pair of boots so that I have a little bit more armor. And you can see my armor gauge went up down there in the corner. And what else do I need? Is that it? I have my spade, I have my sword, I have this. Oh yes, I need a boat. There we go. Alright, I'm ready to go.
In exactly the same way, if your infinite eye wants you to have an experience, it's going to have to provide you with everything you need for that experience, including the money. Can't you just picture an infinite eye at the field, shuffling things in and out of the infinite inventory, choosing the frequencies for what you need? On the other hand, if you want to have an experience that your infinite eye decides it doesn't want for you at that time, it won't provide what you need, especially the money, no matter how hard you pray or visualize or try to manifest it. But let's say your infinite eye has decided on an experience for you and wants to get the money to you that you need. How does it do that? This is where your beliefs come in. All the beliefs a player has about money have one major effect. They limit its infinite eye when it tries to get that money to the player. In other words, the player is causing its own limitations and restrictions by walking around with all these beliefs in its head. What are the 3 basic ways most players today think they can get money? Earning or working for it, investing it, or winning the lottery. There are a couple other minor ways, like borrowing it, inheriting it, stealing it, begging for it, and so on. But if you have the belief that you basically have to earn or work for all the money you receive, your infinite eye's options are very limited in getting the money to you that you need for an experience. Let go of that belief and you make its job a lot easier. Let me give you an example from my own life. I had an invitation to travel from Portugal to deliver these holographic universe workshops to a group in Berlin. My hosts were going to pay for my transportation, but they wanted me to buy the ticket and they would reimburse me when I arrived. I wasn't sure this trip was what my infinite eye wanted me to do, although it excited me very much to think about it. So I went online and found that an airplane ticket would cost €250. Then I looked at my bank account and I had $96.31 to my name. Obviously, I couldn't buy the ticket then, and I still didn't know whether I would go. I went to sleep, and when I woke up the next morning, an extra $250 I had not expected had been deposited in my bank account. And here's the picture of my bank statement to prove it, although it's hard to read. I took this screenshot of my bank account because I figured no one would believe me if they couldn't see the evidence. I will admit that $250 is not exactly the same as €250, but still, I now had enough money to buy the ticket and confirmation that my infinite eye wanted me to make the trip. The point is that I did absolutely nothing to earn or work for that $250. I did nothing to try to make it happen. I did nothing at all. I went to sleep. The money just appeared in my bank account overnight. because I no longer had the belief that it couldn't. That has happened time and time again as I have applied this model in my life. My infinite I has always provided the money for whatever experience it wants me to have, but not necessarily for whatever experience I want to have. And that money has most often come from very unexpected sources that I could not have imagined or created myself. So I now have complete trust through personal experience that my infinite I can create money for me out of thin air. But I'm not yet at the point where I can just hold out my hand and have money appear, like Sai Baba did with vibhuti and jewelry. That would still freak me out. Yet I know it's possible if I could let go of my fears about that as well. I could give you lots of examples from my own life like this, but let's just do a couple more short ones from other people. A friend of mine and his friend were in Monte Carlo, and they suddenly had a very exciting idea to go to the casino. My friend had just been to the cash machine and gotten 3 100-euro notes, and he and his friend knew that was all he had in his wallet. But they found out it was a 500-euro minimum to gamble, so they decided to pool their money and see if they had enough. My friend took out his wallet and counted one and then a second 100-euro note. But the third one was a 500-euro note. My friend and his friend looked at each other in amazement. Both of them knew my friend only had what he had just withdrawn, 3 100-euro notes. So they believed this wasn't possible. And right before their eyes, the 500-euro note changed back into a 100-euro note. A woman owed her bank $10,000 for a loan she had taken out. She got a bank statement saying her balance was 0. She immediately called the bank and told them they had made a mistake. They agreed, and the balance she owed was restored to $10,000. Another woman had a $30,000 mortgage on her house. She also received a statement from the bank that her balance was 0. She expressed great appreciation to her infinite I and went on about her business. And if you have a moral or ethical problem with that, I would point out that that's a belief system as well, which you might want to consider letting go of. If you were in a virtual reality machine and you watched your bank balance go from $100 to $100,000 in 10 seconds, would you protest and say, "But I didn't earn or work for that money"? Would you call the bank and tell them they made a mistake? Of course not, because you know it's a virtual reality, and the money's not real. It's just created out of thin air by a computer program. Well, guess what? Now we know the holographic universe is a virtual reality, and money is created out of thin air by our infinite eyes. And it might be wise to start letting go of our old beliefs that make it harder to get that money to us. Am I suggesting that you don't need to do anything in order to have money? That you don't have to earn or work for it, for example? Yes, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. About all a player needs to do in order to receive money from its infinite I is get its beliefs out of the way about how that money can come to it. That was the one good thing about The Secret. It allowed people to let go of the belief that a BMW could never just show up in their driveway. But I do want to add that if you feel truly excited about doing something that brings you total joy to do, that might also mean some money would come your way, then by all means do it. Follow that excitement, and maybe there will be money coming to you as a result, and maybe not. Just don't do anything or try to make something happen for the money. Do it for the pure excitement and fun and joy. And remember, all the money you have ever received in your life came from your infinite I. There is no other possible source for it. All that's required for you to have money is for your infinite I to want you to have it and create it for you, and for you to be able to receive it without blocking it with your beliefs. That's it.
This is the only radical thinking that you need to do. But it is so radical, it's so difficult, because our tendency is that the world is already out there, independent of my experience. It is not. Quantum physics has been so clear about it.
I just had to play that one last time. Obviously, this does not just apply to money, but to everything we need as players to play the human game. Someplace to live, food to eat, and relationships with other people. If you start living this model, you will get first-hand experience with this and know, as I do, with certainty and trust, that your infinite I will always provide everything you need to have whatever experience it wants for you, including the money. There's a quote from the Christian Bible that I like. So do not worry, saying, "What shall we eat?" or "What shall we drink?" or "What shall we wear?" Your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. At this point, the question is often asked, how can we get our infinite eyes to create more money for us, especially since we want to do good things with it? Could we just ask for it or pray for it? Can't we just manifest it using the secret, for example? Of course you can pray for it, if you like, if that brings you joy. There's always an open connection between you and your infinite I, and you can always send a request to it in any way or form you want. I would caution you about two things, however. First, only pray or request once. Don't keep repeating the same prayer or sending the same request. Your infinite I got it the first time, and all subsequent prayers or requests simply mean that you think your infinite I is slacking on the job because you haven't gotten what you want yet, and you want it now. Or, as I like to say, instant gratification is not fast enough. But maybe your infinite I doesn't want to honor your prayer or request, because to do so would interfere with other plans it has for you that you're not aware of. So the other thing is not to be attached to the outcome of any prayer or request. You are free to desire and ask for anything you can think of. Desirelessness is not some kind of virtue. But you can't be attached to actually having any of those desires fulfilled. It's the attachment to the outcome that we need to let go of. Perhaps that's what the Buddha was trying to say. Now, the biggest problem with The Secret and all other New Age self-help concepts, such as the law of attraction, is that when it doesn't work, which is most of the time, the player thinks they must have done something wrong, that they are deficient, defective, or somehow at fault for not manifesting something, and that all they need to do is improve themselves, spiritually evolve, and then it will work. This is not correct. It's not your fault that it doesn't work. It's because the basic premises underlying the secret and the law of attraction are incorrect, so they can't possibly work all the time, not even most of the time for most people. Every player is doing everything at every moment exactly right, exactly what its infinite I wants it to be doing. It is only the players who think they are less than perfect because they want things to be different than they are for some reason, and believe they should have the power to change things. But they don't have that power. Only the infinite I has the power to create or manifest anything. It's true that most players think they make money, and they have created all kinds of stories about how they make that money. By working, by selling something, by getting loans or gifts, by inheritance, by many different methods. But the truth is, according to these models, the infinite I is the one who creates the money for its player, but it can only send it to its player in ways that the player believes it can receive it. The infinite I needs no story to explain its creation of money. Only the player with its limiting beliefs and limited thinking needs a story to receive it. If we as players could let go of all these beliefs we have about money, could stop needing some story about how the money can come to us, it would take away all the limitations we put on receiving money and make the infinite I's job so much easier. So how do we do that? How do we let go of our limiting beliefs about money and about other things as well? There's no easy answer to that question, but there are some techniques out there that might help some of you. Robert Scheinfeld has his process as part of his tools for transformation. Jed McKenna has his spiritual autolysis that he describes in his books. Byron Katie has her work. Psych K has its workshops. But the one thing you have to keep in mind and be very aware of whenever you try one of these techniques is that we do not want to trade one set of beliefs for another. We want to let go of our beliefs altogether. And the problem is that many techniques focus on the beliefs themselves, and that will take you nowhere. Because underneath every belief you have is a judgment. And if you don't also address and let go of the judgment, you'll just create another belief on top of it to replace the one you currently have. As I said in Part 4, talking about the rules of the human game, fear and resistance are the foundations of the first part of the human game, and judgments and their resulting beliefs are the glue that keeps the illusions together. A belief is simply the result of a judgment hiding in the corner of your mind, just like an opinion is the result of a belief you have adopted. Let me say it simply. At the basis of all opinions are beliefs. At the basis of all beliefs are judgments. At the basis of all judgments are fears. And at the basis of all fears is a layer of the ego defining who you are and trying its best to maintain its existence. A couple quick examples, true stories. My date turned to me at a party, pointing to a very nice-looking older woman on the dance floor who was dressed a little sexy, and said, "That woman's a tramp," which was her opinion. When I asked, "Why do you say that?" my date responded, "She should dance more appropriately for her age." That was her belief. Under that belief is a judgment. Perhaps something like, "It's wrong to be showing off your talents or your body." And under that judgment is a fear. Maybe I might lose my man to someone who looks and dances like that, and then I'd be alone for the rest of my life. And under that fear is a layer of the ego that whispers, I'm better than her, and I don't have to show off to prove it. If my date let go of her belief that the woman should dance more appropriately for her age, but kept the judgment that it's wrong to be showing off your talents or your body, she could simply form a new belief about the way women talk, or walk, or dress, or the length of their hair, to replace the old one about dancing. I had a very good friend who had opinions, beliefs, and judgments about women who wore the color pink. Didn't want to have anything to do with them. He's single, by the way, based on some past experience he had, or maybe just his gut feeling. And he decided that his opinions, beliefs, and judgments were correct, and didn't want to think about letting go of them. And that's fine. But it wouldn't surprise me if his infinite eye sent him the perfect woman for him, dressed in pink, to give him another opportunity to think again. Another dear friend had the same kind of opinion, belief, and judgment about people who smoke. Fortunately, she let go of them when a man appeared in her hologram who smoked, and they've now been happily married for years. But this discussion is beyond the scope of these workshops. If you want to go further into this topic, I suggest you read my free ebook. Right now, I want to focus on the judgments we have that give rise to the beliefs we hold so that we can let go of them. And if there's one thing I hope you will take away from these 6 hours of workshops, more important perhaps than all the quantum physics stuff and the brain research and the models, it is that our judgments about our experiences, those arbitrary and arrogant, I might add, decisions about right and wrong, better and worse, good and bad, good and evil, are what cause all our pain and suffering. Because the problem is that as soon as we judge some experience to be bad or wrong, or worse than we want it to be, we begin resisting that experience. And if there's one law that seems to be at work in both parts of the human game, it's what you resist persists. In other words, my infinite eye might be creating the same or similar experiences for me as long as I judge and resist them, which is an interesting new way to look at karma. And that includes war and violence, and all the other things many people are resisting and trying to get rid of in their lives and on this planet. Take an objective look at what's going on out there. As far as I can tell, there are more peace workers than ever before, and there's also more war and violence than ever before. What you resist persists. As long as we resist war and violence, they will continue, and maybe even increase. Buckminster Fuller said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." The way I would say it is, instead of judging and resisting what you see and trying to change it, follow your excitement and live something radically new. Or, as Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. But if it is your excitement and total joy to step in front of a tank, do it. But do it because it excites you in the moment and brings you joy, not because you are judging war and violence to be wrong and trying to stop it. If you remember, in part 4 of these workshops, I talked about the human game having 2 parts. Many people are judging and resisting being in the first part, trying their best to get out and into the second part. But what you resist persists. As long as we judge and resist the first part of the human game, we're likely to stay there until we don't anymore. Ironically, it seems that you can't leave the first part of the human game until you no longer want to, until you no longer resist being there, until you totally embrace and accept the first part for exactly the perfection it is. But, I hear many people protesting, how can you call all the pain and suffering I see out there perfect? And now we're back full circle to the question of perception, how we perceive things, as Bashar would say it. In part 4, I said we do not have the power or ability to change anything we see in our holograms, and we can stop wasting our time and energy trying. But we do have the power to change how we perceive our holograms, and then change our reactions or responses to them by removing our judgment, belief, and opinion filters, as Dr. Lipton would say, allowing us to see the complete picture as it actually is. Before we end these workshops, I want to quote again from the King James Version of the Holy Bible. From the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Please note that in the middle of the Garden of Eden there was not just one tree, which we all know about, but 2 trees, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And then God created man and woman, and they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Please note that there was no judgment from the man or woman about their nakedness. Unfortunately, this lack of shame and guilt didn't last very long. According to the Bible, a snake convinced the woman, who then convinced the man, to eat some fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. Eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil marked the beginning of judgment for the human race. For that's what the tree of knowledge of good and evil is, the tree of judgment. Not only did the man and woman judge that being naked was now something to be ashamed of and to hide, but they also judged that they had done something wrong. From this point forward, according to the Bible, life on earth would be full of the dichotomies of good and evil, right and wrong, better and worse, and it remains that way to this day. So much for the tree of knowledge of good and evil. What about the tree of life? What was its effect on man when he ate from it? Unfortunately, according to the Bible, God drove Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden before they could eat from the tree of life, leaving the human race to live its entire existence thus far in judgment. That's how the Bible begins. But how does it end? To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God, says the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation. So someone is finally going to get to eat from the tree of life if they overcometh. But overcometh what? The answer clearly is judgment. Overcometh the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Overcometh judgment, and you can eat from the tree of life. Like a butterfly, I might add. To end this workshop series, I want you to watch Plato's Cave one more time.
Imagine prisoners that have spent their entire lives chained deep inside a cave. They have been chained so that they cannot see behind themselves, and they are forced to stare endlessly at the cave wall in front of them. Behind them, a fire is burning, and between the prisoners and the fire is a raised walkway. Now imagine that each day, a menagerie of objects crosses the walkway. Animals, and people carrying their wares to market. Their shapes create an intricate shadow play on the wall in front of the prisoners. This is the only world that the prisoners have ever known. The shadows and the echoes of unseen objects. Now, imagine that a prisoner is released. After some time adjusting to the blinding light, the freed prisoner will begin to experience the world outside of the cave for the very first time. And it is like nothing he could have ever imagined. With his new perception of the world, the man will of course want to return to his friends to share his incredible discoveries. But the prisoners cannot recognize their old friend. He appears as all things do. His voice is a distorted echo, and his body is a grotesque shadow. They cannot understand his fantastic stories of the world outside of the cave. To them, it will never exist.
I hope by now it's clear that it is our judgments and beliefs that are keeping us chained inside the cave. Nothing else. I've tried to give you all the scientific evidence through quantum physics and the recent brain research why you no longer need to judge your experiences, or anyone or anything in them, since they were all created specifically for you by your own infinite eye as gifts, down to the smallest detail. In short, there is no reason to say no anymore to what appears in your holographic 3D total immersion movie, no matter what it is.
Es un pacto. ¿Cómo estás, tío? No. El pacto. ¿Ves? Me están castigando. Y dale con esa gilipollez del pacto. No es una gilipollez.
Sí, es una gilipollez.
Es él. ¡Oh! Gracias a Dios. Terence, tienes que anular el pacto. Me está matando.
Para empezar, ¿qué estabas haciendo en mi coche?
Te lo he dicho, necesito que anules el pacto.
No hay ningún pacto, ni jamás lo ha habido. Solo era palabrería.
¿Palabrería?
Algo tenía que decir, estabas en plan coñazo, dejándome mal delante de mis seguidores.
¿Entonces todo lo del sí es mentira?
No, no sabes ponerlo en práctica, eso es todo.
Sí que sé, digo que sí a todo, no hay que ser un lumbreras.
Esa no es la idea. Bueno, tal vez al principio, pero eso es solo para empezar, para soltarte. Luego empiezas a decir que sí, no por obligación, ni porque hayas hecho ninguna clase de pacto, sino porque quieres hacerlo de corazón.
Sí. Tienes razón. Eso sí tiene sentido. ¿Lo ves? Es lo que yo te dije.
Tú no dijiste eso.
Claro que sí.
No lo dijiste así.
No con ese vozarrón, pero sí te lo dije.
If we will let go of our beliefs and the judgments underneath them, and stop resisting the experiences our infinite eye creates for us, and just say yes to them, all of them, our lives will never be the same. If true joy and excitement and peace of mind are what you are hoping to find in life, you might want to give these models a try. Good luck. And thank you for watching this workshop series. Remember, you can download my free ebook, Butterflies Are Free to Fly, a new and radical approach to spiritual evolution, by visiting www.butterfliesfree.com. I want to express my deep appreciation to Lenny Ibizarre for the use of his studio, Can Chill Studios, on Ibiza, Spain, for recording the narration to these videos.